Hi, my name is Peggy LaPointe, and this is Talking Trash, a Green Tips podcast, a chance for me to dive into the world of sustainability by talking to people in business, government, nonprofits, and folks knee-deep in the field of sustainability. Episode 3 features Karen Lickteig, Marketing and Sustainability Director at Nossa Familia Coffee.
I've been with Nossa Familia about 3.5 years. Yeah, it's been really fun. I've enjoyed it. Kind of went from starting working farmers markets and having a very nebulous job. Still feel like I have sort of a nebulous job. I just added sustainability to my title as well, so marketing and sustainability director. But we've grown a lot over the past few years since I've been there, from probably 15 people when I started maybe to now 45.
Wow.
So a lot of growth.
2004 was when Nossa Familia was founded by a Brazilian native, Augusto Carneiro. And give me a little bit of background about the company, because it is fascinating. He comes from a family of coffee growers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So he grew up in Rio in the city, but his extended family lives all around Brazil and the coffee growing regions. So he would spend his summers as a little kid on the coffee farms, like playing with his cousins and riding horses. I actually got to visit his family in Brazil this past summer, and it was great to make that connection. You know, I've done marketing for Nossa Familia for a few years, and I have to talk about the farms and being able to go and meet, the people our coffee is named after, actually. So Ernesto and Augusta are two of the namesake of the coffees. That's Augusto's grandparents, and they're still there, still running the farm, still wake up at like 5 a.m. to get things going. It's a really cool story. Augusto moved to Portland for college. He went to the University of Portland and studied engineering and worked as an engineer for a couple years, and then had a little bit of a crisis probably when he realized he didn't want to be an engineer after working as that for a while, and started thinking about ways that he could visit his family more and draw that connection between his new family and home in Portland and his family in Brazil. So he's been able now to have an even better reason to go back and visit family every year, to visit the farms and keep up with what's going on there, but also just to, be with his grandparents and parents.
Has sustainability been sort of part of the company from the get-go? Is it just something that Augusto brought into Nossa Familia, just as this is us, this is who we are?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Sustainability, I actually first met Augusto doing an interview for Edible Portland magazine. So I asked him a bunch of questions about this series. It was called the Local Hero Awards, and it was all about sustainable local food businesses. And I asked him, what sustainability meant to him, and he described it as literally like going back to the root of the word, of like the ability to sustain something. So his family has been growing coffee in Brazil since the 1890s, and that's it takes a lot of work to sustain a farm over that amount of time. It means not destroying the land and not taking advantage of people so that they'll, stay working for you. There's people who have grown up on the farm and their parents worked there. They still live on the farm. So that's what sustainability means to him and to us as a company. We take a really broad look at it. It's not just about the environment. It's about taking care of people, and the environment and a lot of other things. So the idea of, treating everyone like family, thinking about environmental impact, it's always been part of the company and part of Augusto's philosophy.
Especially with a farm, as you mentioned, to have a working farm for what is now 125 years, you have to take care of the land in order to keep this product growing. You mentioned going down to Brazil, and one thing that is interesting about Nossa Familia is that there is a connection with most of the farmers who grow the coffee that you then sell.
Yeah. Actually, I would say now all of the farmers, there's a connection where we try to meet all of the farmers, visit them. We get samples, and our director of coffee gives them feedback. It's about a sustained relationship. So some coffee roasters, the way they work is they might just like every year get samples and buy what's best. But we have year-over-year relationships with the same farms. So the core of it is Augusto's family. But when our director of coffee started with us about 6 years ago, he brought some of his origin relationships, notably in Guatemala. And then Augusto had a kind of serendipitous connection to a farm in Nicaragua. So we've expanded the origins that we source from, but there's always that kind of familial connection. And I've really enjoyed, I've visited Guatemala and Nicaragua, Brazil now, and I, text with the farmers. A lot of them, my Spanish is okay, so sometimes I speak Spanish with the ones who can't speak English as much. Some of them speak English, and we text back and forth. So it really is a relationship, and it's a sustained relationship. It's about, a feedback loop, and it's been really great to build those relationships over the years. And they're so even the new coffees that we bring on, it's a really deliberate kind of decision. Like, it's a whole process. Like, okay, when are we going to be able to visit this farm, meet the farmers, all of that.
Mm-hmm. That was one thing that stuck. Actually, a number of things stuck out on the website. The core values was something that I took note of as well. The main one, ABMF, always be making friends.
Yeah.
I love that. Live fully, entrepreneurial spirit, care and build trust. Those all come from Augusto.
Yeah. ABMF is definitely, if you meet Augusto, that is definitely him. Like, he's the kind of person you become instant friends with. He's just so kind and has a really big heart. And I'm feel really lucky to work for someone like that, who I truly believe is a good person and has really good intentions and just genuinely wants to take care of everyone he meets. And he, it's funny when he sends emails sometimes, like, well, it sounds like we're friends, we just don't know it yet, Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right, I want to talk about some of the sustainability efforts, because again, in my circle of sustainability friends and colleagues, working at Metro, Nossa Familia comes up a lot, because of the practices that are in place. And I want to talk about the Seven Corners Cafe in a minute, but it goes, for instance, KINK is, we're the first carbon neutral radio station in the U.S. We use a lot of electricity. There's nothing we can do about it. With a coffee maker, same with food, there's packaging. There has to be in order for the product to be at its best. But some of the things that Nossa Familia has done in regards to the packaging, can you speak to that?
Yeah, definitely. So we're always thinking about how to reduce our footprint. And yeah, unfortunately, as you brought up, packaging is one thing for consumer packaged goods. It's just kind of how things are. A couple years ago, we undertook a pretty big packaging overhaul, redid all of our bags, and there's some new packaging technology out there that is biodegradable material. We did testing on whether sealed bags and certain types of material that are perceived as maintaining freshness actually do maintain freshness. So we actually have a lot of wholesale customers, and they get really large 5-pound bags. So we try to sell bigger bags as much as possible. And all of our local customers actually have a paper bag. So New Seasons Market, for example, is our biggest customer. They sell a lot of bulk coffee, so it gets delivered in 5-pound bags, and they're all paper bags. So that's because they go kind of directly into a bulk bin, so there's no reason for it to be a really hefty, sealed, thick bag. So that was one decision we made to reduce the packaging footprint. Actually, there's some really cool things happening now. There's a couple zero waste small grocery markets opening up soon, and they're trying to get coffee delivered in bins, in reusable bins, instead of disposable packaging. We've been doing that for our cafes for a while. Instead of using disposable bags, they have bins that our roasting team puts the coffee directly into, delivers it to the cafe, and it gets sent back, cleaned, and then start the cycle over. So we think really intentionally about our packaging and trying to think about why things are the way they are and if they could actually be done in a different way. Talk about this more, I'm sure, but a lot of things are done just based on tradition and what has been the default and perceptions by consumers that may not actually be true. So we're always kind of thinking about how we can experiment with new ways to reduce waste.
I heard you talk, we mentioned this before the microphones came on, the conference that was held last fall, and I forgot the name of it again.
The Zero Waste
Thank
Conference.
you, the Zero Waste Conference. And in the video, you were talking about these bags that were made out of old denim and clothing.
Yeah.
Describe that again, because I found that fascinating.
Yeah, so, I mean, packaging even goes back to the things that you don't see. How our green coffee, it's called, the raw coffee beans get delivered to us from the farms. And this has been one of the most frustrating things seeing at the roastery level is a lot of coffee, most coffee, I would say, is delivered in burlap or jute sacks. And it's, when you think of like a coffee sack, it's like, oh yeah, it's burlap, like a potato sack or something. Our Brazilian coffee, actually, they started using paper sacks, and so they can go directly into the recycling. But pretty much every other origin we have are these burlap sacks, and they're actually really not good for the environment in the production side or the disposal side. We can't recycle them. We end up giving them to gardeners, which is useful for them. But we found a way there's a textile factory in Guatemala that is recycling old clothing and excess denim cutting from like jeans cut and sew, and they're breaking down the fibers and milling it into new threads and making new fabric out of it. So they started using it to make coffee sacks for one of the farms we worked with, and we got this delivery of coffee in these beautiful fabric sacks that then we can take and make other products out of. So it was really cool. A couple years ago, someone from Keene down the street in the Pearl District wandered into our espresso bar and could see the sacks through the window there, and he started asking questions about them because he worked with textiles, and I just happened to be in the espresso bar instead of the office getting a coffee, and we started chatting, and we formed a partnership that they would buy the sacks from us and upcycle them even further into tote bags.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Now I want to talk about this. And for a couple of years, I do green tips that air on KINK 5 times a week. And one of the things I've been saying over and over and over again for years is that giving a discount for bringing in your own mug isn't enough. And to really encourage change, to really get people to change, I have felt that places need to charge for to-go containers. And then I found out that you guys started doing this at your new 7 Corner store. So tell me about the decision behind that, because it's not an easy decision for a small independent coffee maker, coffee and cafe to make when you have larger coffee chains, not being willing to step up.
Yeah.
So what was the discussion behind that?
Yeah, I mean, it was really tough. We knew that we were opening this cafe, and we already had 3 other cafes under our belt that we had opened fairly recently. And I was kind of the one who was like, hey, I think we should really think more about sustainability in this cafe and maybe set some goals around being zero waste and carbon neutral, and think about how we can influence our customers a little more to think about their choices as well. And also really recently, I'd been reading more about behavioral economics, and Richard Thaler won the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2017 for his work on behavior change and what he calls nudge. So he wrote a book called Nudge, and it's all about how businesses and governments are what are called choice architects. So they have the power to influence how people make choices. And as a business that cares about sustainability, we had just been following, what the default behavior is of offering a complimentary to-go cup. Like, that's just how it is. But why? No one really questions why that's done and if that's actually a good idea. And it's really not. It's a really bad idea because we're paying for the cup, and the city is often paying for the cup in the disposal and the litter, and the earth is paying for the cup in the 50 billion cups sent to the landfill every year.
And 30 million in Portland. Yeah. And it's true, for something that's being used for at the most a half hour.
Yeah, right. It's crazy.
It's unnecessary. And so at your Seven Corner store, which opened when? Because it's recent.
August.
In August. And so you do give a discount for folks who bring in their mugs, 25 cents. But there's also a fee for the takeaway, the to-go cups, 25 cents. And how was that met by customers?
We were really scared to do this. It was a really big discussion among the leadership, people involved in, opening the cafe of, can we do this? Should we do this? Are customers going to just backlash and revolt? Because we are a company that's all about sustainability, but we're also we have a bend over backwards policy for customer service and wanting to make people happy. And we are serious people pleasers, and it's like anything we can do to make a customer happy, we will do it.
Well, with one of the core values, exactly, of being a BMF, always be making friends. That makes sense.
Yeah. So we were really kind of terrified to do this, and we were like, okay, well, we'll just test this out, and if it fails horribly, like, we'll be prepared to go back and apologize. And we printed our menu on like a recyclable material just in case it failed horribly. But I think one major boon to the whole thing was we hired a manager who was completely on board with the initiative and even more zealous about it than I was, which was great. And she really helped with the messaging and training the barista staff there as well on the messaging. And she just totally took it to a whole other level, which was really great to see. And I think it could have failed horribly if the staff there weren't on board as much as they have been. So the customer response has been overwhelmingly positive. We've gotten, 5-star public reviews online of people specifically mentioning the sustainability initiative there and really appreciating it. And I think, the first time people come in, it's unexpected because, it's not the norm. But once we talk to people about it, they're like, oh, yeah, that totally makes sense, actually. And next time I will bring my own cup, or next time I'll plan a little more time into my schedule to get it for here. And the default option there is on the menu. The prices listed are for here. So we encourage people to hang out with their drink. Like you said, it doesn't take that long to drink your coffee drink. And if you do want to get it to go and sip on, bring your own cup or be prepared to pay 25 cents for the to-go cup, because it costs us something. It should cost you something. It costs the earth. It just makes sense, really.
Well, and you sent over some statistics about this. You have results from October of 3 of the cafes, and you break it down with the percentage of people who are drinking their coffee in your cafe to people who are bringing their own cup to folks who are getting a to-go cup. And the numbers are very interesting. In the Pearl District, which makes perfect sense because it's, people are leaving and going, and, 80% get their cup coffee in to-go cups, and 7% bring their own cup. Central East Side, Where is that store located?
It's close to OMSI. It's
Okay.
like an industrial office area.
Okay.
But there's a lot of seating there, so very easy to hang out.
Yeah, so 52% are getting their coffee in to-go cups, 5% bringing their own. And then at Seven Corners, 31% in to-go cups and 17% bringing their own cups. I mean, that's...
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
From 50 to 80% to go down to 30% getting to-go cups. But what I think is even more interesting than that, huge reduction in to-go cups, yes, but we're offering the same discount for bringing your own cup, and there's a huge, much larger number of people bringing their own cup to Seven Corners, and we're offering the same discount. So that was really unexpected, even based on my research and what I'd been reading. And I really think it has to do a lot with the culture of the cafe there, that there's a discussion about the sustainability initiative. There's a kind of in-group for participating in it. Customers aren't shamed for getting a to-go cup by any means, but there's this sense of, oh, wow, I want to participate in what this cafe is doing. It's really positive. It's a great thing to do. And next time I want to bring my own cup because that makes total sense. I should. I have one. The baristas have told me stories of people who see the to-go cup upcharge and are like, oh, wow, I have my own cup in my car. I'll just go get it. Or, oh, I have one in my purse. Here you go.
Oh, my goodness.
Come on, just use it. Yeah.
Right,
and
right.
that upcharge makes them think about it, makes them pause and say, oh, yeah, I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, it's not surprising to me because it really makes you think. You think more when you have to pay versus when you're getting something for less just because you brought it. It jars you, even though it's 25 cents. It still jars you.
Yeah.
So the response has been good, which makes me very happy.
Yeah.
And have you thought about doing it at your other cafes?
We have. Yeah.
There's a discussion going on.
There's definitely a discussion. We were going to do it actually in the new year, but things got really crazy with the holidays, and we're like, oh, we want to just sit on this for a few more months, I think, and figure out the messaging, and hopefully roll it out sometime in the next few months. We think the most difficult part is going to be our Pearl District location, because it is the most established and it is a very to-go culture there. 80% of people get their drinks to go, and it's really because there's not a lot of places to sit there. So thinking about how we can kind of soften the blow of it in the Pearl and not make people upset. But I think from what we know about our customers, we have some pretty deep relationships with regulars, and people really care, and they want to do positive things, and they already like our environmental initiatives. So I think that if we, do it right, that it will overall be pretty positive. We just want to make sure that people have kind of notice and options and understand why we're doing it before we just kind of spring it on them.
No, that's good. And taking the best practices from Seven Corners and bring it into the other cafes. The other thing that I noted from the Seven Corners is, it's the zero waste doesn't just apply to the to-go cups. When you're at your station where you have the sugars and everything, you've got no straws, no sleeves, no lids, no sugar packets. I mean, you offer reusable straws for folks who need them, but it's a mindset of this is who we are.
Yeah.
And then the other one is the reusable packaging in the oatmeal in mason jars.
Yeah.
Again, that's fantastic. And then you charge, again, a fee for a rental fee for the mason jars. People can take that to go and then bring it back. What's the return rate on that?
Ooh, I actually have no idea. Okay. I think it's pretty good, but I mean, we're charging enough to cover the cost of the mason jar. So if someone wants to keep it, okay, you paid $2 and you can keep it for your own purposes. It's a pretty standard kind of product you can use for a lot of things. Yeah. So that was one of the ideas that the manager there, Camille, had for the zero waste initiatives, and I love it. I get it a lot, and with my employee discount, it's really affordable. So that's just one of the things, and Camille's working now on more food options there. It's one of the feedback items we've been getting is people want to see more. And so that'll be another big question of how do we do more food and also be zero waste. So luckily, New Seasons is right across the street, and they've been investing a lot in Go Box, which is really cool. Right. Having a system for a good reusable clamshell container that doesn't get thrown away. So we're weighing our options and seeing what will be good for that.
Yeah, and then I even saw that with bagels. If someone wants cream cheese and bagel, you give them the toasted bagel with a ceramic thing of cream cheese. They spread it, and then they can go, and there's no waste.
Yeah, no little plastic ramekins that are just needless waste. Yeah.
Perfect. What's next? Let's finish up with what's next. What are you guys sort of thinking about as far as? Because I know that I know from reading on the website again that it's constantly, looking at different tweaks here and there. Nothing is static. So are you guys talking about what more you can do?
Yeah, definitely. So we actually set, a bunch of goals with the new cafe. We haven't even talked about the inclusion aspect of it and accessibility. So that cafe is in the Seven Corners Collaborative, which is a headquarters for several nonprofits working in the disability space. So doing this kind of zero waste experiment has been really interesting to see the response from that community as well. So right at the peak of, the debate about straws and inclusivity and ableism. So it was really interesting to see all of that discussion. We've had really deep conversations with customers and people who work in the building. So always thinking about how we can be more inclusive and accessible. One thing we've run into actually with that cafe is we didn't anticipate not having enough seating to allow people to hang out. So we're encouraging people to get their coffee for here. But it's not a huge cafe. There are lots of seats, but we've often found not enough seats, especially in the wintertime when no one wants to sit outside. So we're thinking about how we can squeeze more seats in, but also remain accessible. So that's a challenge that we've got coming up. And then the two kind of environmental goals that we set with the cafe were zero waste and also carbon neutral. And I've been doing a lot of research on what carbon neutral means, and we're working on carbon neutral certification. It's from Natural Capital Partners, and they have a whole assessment that you do to measure your carbon footprint, and then actually all of the money that we've collected from the To-Go Cup upcharge, we're not taking as profit. We're actually putting towards carbon offsets.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and it's actually working out. Like the amount that we've collected and the amount we need for the credits are like pretty well aligned.
Perfect.
So it's going to be exciting to be able to say, hey, the To-Go Cup upcharge was never about the money. It was all about how do we make people conscious of their choices and discourage waste. So being able to put what we've collected for that towards carbon offsets is really cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. Well, Karen, first of all, thanks for the latte this morning. And thanks for coming in and talking about what's going on at Nossa Familia.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me for my conversation with Karen Lickteig, Marketing and Sustainability Director at Nossa Familia Coffee. Be sure to like and subscribe to Talking Trash, a Green Tips podcast, wherever you're listening. Talking Trash is a podcast series featuring people in business, government, nonprofits, and sometimes just regular folks in the Portland area and around Oregon who are having an impact in the world of sustainability.